Television on RxMuscle.com. This is Ask Dave, better known as hashtag Ask Dave, brought to you by Species Nutrition. Visit speciesnutrition.com. I'm your host, Sadiq Faruqi. This is your 30-minute question and answer show with Dave Palumbo. All your questions on diet, training, supplementation, IFBB pros, competitions. Of course, one of the biggest shows of the IFBB year is right around the corner. It is this weekend, the New York Pro. Dave, we have Regan Grimes, his interview live on the YouTube channel and on RxMuscle.com. Akeem Williams dropping tonight, a highly anticipated New York Pro this weekend.
Yeah, it seems like everyone and their mother's jumping into this lineup, and Chris and I did a little preview of it on Monday on Heavy Muscle Radio, and a lot of these guys weren't even signed up yet. I didn't see Regan's name on it. I didn't see Akeem was on there, thank God. But a lot of these guys are signing up at the last minute. De La Rosa wasn't on the list. I know he's doing it, so Justin Rodriguez. It's going to be one of the best lineups maybe of all time this year. And, there's no foregone conclusion as to who's going to win. That's what's so exciting about it. When you know a guy is going to go in there and decimate everyone, it kind of takes away the excitement of it. But when it's a wide open lineup and you don't know who's going to show up at their best and you got wild cards like Regan Grimes in there, that makes it exciting. Nathan Diaz obviously is the highest placing guy in the lineup in terms of Olympia placings with an 8th place finish or 7th place finish. But, that doesn't guarantee him the win. So it'll be interesting to see what's going on. I'm impressed with what I've seen from Juan Morel lately, his pictures that he's been putting up. And I think, this guy won the show before. I think it's going to be an epic battle up there between, the top 4 or 5 guys. I think any one of those guys can win it.
So it's going to be an exciting New York Pro. Myself, Chris Aceto, are going to be there at the Westchester Community Center. We're going to be covering the show. We'll have the full wrap-up. We'll have the winner interviews, highlights, everything from the show. Keep it locked to RxMuscle.com. So as mentioned, we have Regan Grimes on RxMuscle.com and the YouTube channel. Akeem Williams going up tonight. Also, just posted about a couple of hours ago, Nick Trigili, winner of the 2014 USA's, one of the most outspoken personalities in all of bodybuilding. He joined Dave on Live With. That is live right now at RxMuscle.com and the YouTube channel. Let's go to the questions. The first 2 questions from the Dave Palumbo Experience app. Dave, before we go to the questions, if you want to tell the audience a little bit more about the app.
Yeah, for those of you who don't really know about it, I have an app you can download on your iPhone or Android system. It's $29 a month, and it's basically a membership type app where you get access to everything I've ever written, all my videos I've done in the past. You get to ask questions, on the app to me directly, which I answer on a regular basis. And I take the best ones and I do a Q&A video every single week. So the app members get a private, exclusive Q&A video that no one else gets to see weekly, as well as obviously having access to me answering questions. And there's all kinds of little things on there, workout programs. There's all my protocols are on there. It's like a library for bodybuilding in terms of supplementation, diet, drugs, everything you could possibly want to know, as well as workouts on there. So people find it to be a great resource. A lot of my clients have the app too, but if you can't afford to necessarily have coaching with people, you can just subscribe to the app and you're going to have an unlimited resource of information. So I'm pretty happy and pretty proud to say that the app is terrific. And you know what? We're actually launching a new upgraded one this summer. So all the current app members will just transfer over to that, and the new people will get the access to that as well. So always trying to make improvements.
So the first question from the app, Dave, why do you see people eating jam or candy bars before going on stage? What are some of the crazy things you've seen people ingest backstage when you competed? Tell us a good story.
Yeah, I've seen all kinds of nutty stuff going on. There was a guy backstage, his breath was so terrible that I was going to throw up. And I said, and I even told him, I said, man, you need a piece of gum. He goes, no, man, you can't do toothpaste or gum. There's sodium in there. And I'm like, are you out of your freaking mind? I said, so people do kooky stuff. I see people drinking vodka back there, all kinds of alcohol, brandy, thinking that their veins are going to come out from this. They're all whacked backstage. They wind up almost falling down on stage when they're posing. People are eating cakes and cookies and jam. Look, I always say, if you haven't eaten it your whole diet, why are you going to eat it now? The worst thing that could happen, okay, because a lot of people say, well, what's the worst thing that can happen if I have a candy bar or something like that backstage? Well, you'll feel good when you eat the bar. and then they have you out, and the worst thing that can happen is you can be out on stage for 30 minutes, okay, and all of a sudden your blood sugar that was super through the roof, your body releases insulin, drops your blood sugar, and now you pass out on stage because your blood sugar is too low. So sugar is a very, very tricky thing. You're playing Russian roulette. You could look good from the candy bar, but you could also look bad. And a lot of times, most times I should say, people get worse because they get blood sugar drops. So don't eat foods that you don't eat on a regular basis all of a sudden backstage. That's a huge mistake. Now, like I said, once in a while you see a guy do it. Oh, I ate a candy bar and I brought all these veins out. Yeah, but he was out on stage with his class, which had 2 guys in it. He was out there for 5 minutes and then he came back in. So I'm not into simple sugars backstage. I think it's risky. Once again, I like to stick with more complex carbs. I do a lot of rice cakes and peanut butter backstage. What you're trying to do backstage is keep your blood sugar stable. So it doesn't drop, it doesn't go up. We don't need it. At that point, if you don't look good backstage, if you're not full already, you're screwed. You can't be playing catch up when you're dehydrated and pumping up backstage. You're not going to fix anything. All you're going to do is make things worse.
Second question again from the Dave Palumbo Experience app. Dave, I'm following your cyclical diet and app to gain and stay lean. Results have been great. Is it pertinent to keep a fast digesting shake in post-workout? I prefer to eat a solid meal. What would you suggest as a post-workout breakfast and or dinner if I don't use a shake?
If you're dieting, okay, to try to lose body fat, the strategy is to preserve muscle. You're not trying to build muscle per se, so you don't need a post-workout shake. I would just eat the next meal that you have on the docket, or if you have a shake, like let's say you're doing like a protein fat shake, like a whey isolate with peanut butter, like you mentioned, which is a big shake I have a lot of people do, then just have that. You don't have to do a post-workout shake if you're dieting, because the strategy is, once again, not to maximize muscle gains, it's to maximize or preserve muscle while maximizing fat loss. That's the key. And I think people forget that. Now, if you're off season, there's nothing wrong. Have your post-workout shake. Do your isolyze and carbolyze. Get those carbs and protein into the muscles as fast as conceivably possible. Then go home and take your time and have a shake. That's the way I have a meal. That's the way I always worked it. When I was dieting, I worried about losing fat. When I was off season, I worried about trying to put muscle on.
Let's go to our good friend Wesley Vissers. We had on the show about 4 or 5 weeks ago. We actually featured him this morning on Muscle in the Morning. So hello to Wesley. His question: isolating hamstring versus heavy compounds for filling out the hamstrings.
It's a tricky call because when you squat and you leg press, you hack squat, you're using your hamstrings. When you're lowering the weight, that's all hamstring. So you can't take the hamstring out of the movement. You can't say, well, I'm going to do quads today and hamstrings tomorrow. Unless you're just doing leg extensions, you're working both. When you do compound pressing movements or squatting movements, you're using both the hamstrings and the quads, as well as the adductors and abductors for that matter. So you can't do one or the other. So what you're basically saying is if you want to throw a hamstring day in there where you're doing like leg curls and maybe some stiff leg deadlifts, that's going to be an extra day of hamstring work. Now that means that you have to be careful not to overtrain your hamstrings, because a lot of times people's hamstrings get worse if they overtrain them, because the problem was not that they weren't doing enough initially, but they just weren't recovering from the workout. So now here they go and they're doing more now, so now you're really not recovering, and so what you do is you see a reduction in size of the hamstrings rather than an increase in size. So be careful with that. I always preferred my whole career to do squats and all my leg movements on one day, and then just the rest of the week don't touch legs.
I'm not sure if we asked this question 2 or 3 weeks ago, but he asks the same question every week. So it leads me to believe maybe I didn't ask the question. It's from Benadu14. Dave, is there an optimal time to take fiber? Can it affect the digestion of certain supplements or foods?
I try not to take my fiber supplement with fatty acids like my omega lyes or like mac oil, just because fibers can absorb fats. I don't know if they actually would or not, but theoretically taking vitamins like water-soluble vitamins with your fiber, it should be fine as well. But once again, what I try, this is how I structure it. Usually around when I'm about to leave work around 5 o'clock, 5:30, I usually have a fiber shake. just because that's when I remember to do it. And then before bed around 12, 1 in the morning, I'll have another fiber shake. So I try to separate them by almost, about 8 to 10 hours. Some guys will take it earlier in the day, which is probably better. I just forget a lot of times. And what I do is I take my vitamins with my first meal of the day, and then I usually, if I'm going to take a second load of vitamins, I take them with my dinner. So I try to separate everything. That's not to say if I'm on vacation or if I'm in going to a show and I forget, oh shoot, I got to take my vitamins and my fiber. All right, I take the vitamins and I swig my fiber down right after that. So I don't follow my own rules sometimes, but I'd rather get the stuff down than not take it at all.
Let's go to Mike Manny. Dave, last week you explained how the sugars section under carbohydrates means how much sugar content there is, and the rest will be complex carbs. Well, how come when I look at the label on Minute white rice, it says there's no sugar? Can you explain this, seeing as white rice is known as a simple carb and in parentheses, sugar?
No rice is a simple carb. Rice digests quickly and gets into the bloodstream rapidly because they've stripped the husk off of it with the fiber part of it, which is what brown rice is. And they bleached it and they made it white rice. But it's not a sugar, it's still starch. I mean, put it in water and just let it sit there. You can actually feel the starch in it. It's starchy feeling. So it's a complex carbohydrate, it just has a high glycemic index. And I think that's where people can get confused with it. I prefer taking brown rice usually because it has a slower trickling effect into my bloodstream, so my blood sugar levels are more stable on it rather than getting a huge spike when you absorb the white rice really quickly and then dropping when your insulin is released. So I just think that lower glycemic carbs, like your sweet potatoes, like your brown rice, or quinoa, will digest slower and cause less insulin release.
Jacked and Juicy. Dave, do you think eating protein and vegetables before carbs is the best way to not spike insulin too much after one meal?
You got to repeat that, Sid. I missed the first part of it.
Yeah. Do you think eating protein and vegetables before carbs is the best way to not spike insulin too much after one meal?
No, I think you can eat them all together. I think that the best way to eat foods is in food combinations. I remember back in the late 90s, maybe early 2000s, this whole fad came about where people were eating, this meal I'll only eat carbohydrates, this meal I'll only eat protein, this meal I'll only eat fat, and that somehow your body would handle these foods, these macronutrients better because the digestive enzymes work better. Your body can sort things out really well. It's had millions of years of evolution to perfect that digestion process. You're not going to trick it. You're not going to short circuit it by any means by eating foods in the wrong order. Okay.
Hugard Klaus, any certain exercises to develop the outer side of the bicep, giving your arm that nice bicep peak?
You got to remember, everyone has different genetics with regard to arms. So you can't create someone else's genetics. If you say, oh wow, I really like the way that guy's arm looks, you're not going to look like him. That's not your arm. So what you need to do is you want to maximize it, putting size on your arms and see how they look when they get bigger. Okay? Once again, you'll have your own genetic shape. I'll have my genetic shape. This guy will have his genetic shape. I've seen guys with beautiful, like peaked biceps, split down the middle. They don't even know what the hell they're doing. They just genetically have that. So it's hard to make, I guess you could say, the right call as to what's the best workout. It's what feels best to you and where you feel the most stimulation when you're weight training.
Ty Jaws, Dave, if you're natural and doing a ton of volume and spending hours in the gym, weights, cardio, but not making progress, how would you transition to lower volume workouts with more rest days? Also, would you anticipate weight fat gain because of the reduction in volume and time spent in the gym?
There was so much to that question. Just repeat the beginning again.
Well, let's go with the first part first. If you're not making progress, again, if you're natural, doing a ton of volume, spending hours in the gym, weights, cardio, but not making progress, how would you transition lower volume workouts with more rest days?
Okay, that I understand. Yeah, I mean, it doesn't take a transition. If you're doing 20 sets for biceps and you have small arms, you're overtraining your arms, obviously. Do 10 sets, and see how your body responds. So the transition should be immediate, okay? And I think what you'll find, especially if you're a hard gainer and 20 sets is not working for you, that's the way I was. As soon as I cut my volume back, first of all, I would take 2 days completely off the gym, reset your body, Start back, less volume, cut it in half, cut it in a third, and make those sets count as much as you possibly can, and I guarantee you, you will see results. You'll see change. You'll think you're gonna get worse, you're gonna get better.
Earlier, we had the question about some of the wackiest things you've seen people eat backstage. Shredded Ryan wants to know your favorite food to have backstage during pump-up, and what's your most memorable post-contest meal?
Favorite foods to do what?
During your pump-up.
Oh. I don't eat a lot of food when I pump up. You know, I'm all glycogen loaded when I would be backstage already. There's nothing I could do. I would just nibble on a couple rice cakes with a little peanut butter on it. That's it. You know, if you're not ready to go then, you've screwed up. You're not going to fix things backstage from a contest. It's just not going to happen. You're foolish. You got to be ready to go when you get to that venue, okay? And then it's just a matter of just eating just enough food to keep your body looking the way it looks. And unfortunately, a lot of times it doesn't hold like that. And you could get, some people get better, some people get worse. So, you know, probably the most important thing to really keep an eye on is sodium levels. If you start cramping or feeling a little catching in the muscle, it probably means you're sodium depleted, and that means you're probably a little flat. So putting some sodium back before you go on stage, a teaspoon, you know, and maybe an ounce or two of water and just shoot it down, that certainly will help.
David Figs actually has a question for me. I might actually make a separate video on this. A 3-part question about saying that the first time I was on set, I had a suit on. Yes, that's true. Did you ever think Dave would be able to take RxMuscle to the level at which it's now? Were you hesitant on joining the RxMuscle team with all the wacky crew members like Jimmy the Bull and Greg? And how has your life changed since first joining RxMuscle? I'm going to have to make a separate video on that topic, Danny. Yeah. I might actually do that. David Ghosh. David, do you know any bodybuilders, I guess let's stick with the recent ones, who have had knee replacement surgery?
You know, I used to train a guy by the name of John Maglio. He used to do my posing for me, and I did his diet for many, many years. And he was about 10 years older than me, so he's probably 60 now. And he had a replacement because he was a dancer. He was like a ballroom dancer, and he had a bad knee. He had it replaced, and he looked great. I mean, the one leg was a little small than the other one, but those knee replacements are pretty sturdy. They can take a lot of abuse, way more than the shoulder replacement or hip can. And he trained, he squatted, and you know, he did everything he needed to do with that knee replacement, and he was able to put size on. So I think that, you know, you probably, would I go under, you know, doing crazy heavy weights again with my legs if I had to have a knee replacement? Probably not, but could you do it? You probably could get away with training it pretty intensely if you wanted to. It's all, once again, it's a matter of what makes you happy and what your goals are. If you're obsessed with working out and that's very important to you, then you'll do what you got to do. But certainly, if the doctor's telling you have a bad knee and you need a replacement, I would find the best knee guy and I would get it done.
You're watching on Steve on RxMuscle.com, brought to you by Species Nutrition. Again, reminder right now at RxMuscle.com and the YouTube channel, our interview with Regan Grimes, and then uploaded earlier today, our interview with Nick Trigili. And of course, tonight, we're going to be dropping our interview with Akeem Williams. Let's go to Dan the Upman. Dave, best way to deal with clen cramps? Already have a gallon and a half of water and take potassium tabs. Any other ideas?
Yeah, potassium is not a good idea because clenbuterol doesn't deplete the potassium. And if you put too much potassium into your body, that can make the whole situation worse. What clenbuterol does is it makes the muscle contract very hard. And what happens is the muscle can catch sometimes and get crampy, you know, like a Charlie horse, they call it. So what I found works the best is diet tonic water. You can get it in any supermarket. They used to make it with saccharin and it tasted terrible. Nowadays they have ones that made with Splenda, sucralose, so to speak. And you know, you take a couple of 3-4 ounces of that and it seems to nullify the cramps because in tonic water, there's something known as methylquinine. And methylquinine will inhibit cramping in the body. So try that. I'm sure that will cure your problem.
Johnny Classic 95, do you cut your orals, in parentheses AAS, out a few days before the show or run them right through? How much T3 would you recommend running peak week if you're running 50 mcg ED? Hope to hear back from you.
Yeah. I'm not a big oral guy, but you know what? I use halotestin with my clients the last 2 weeks, 20 milligrams a day, and I keep that in right through the day of the show. As far as clenbuterol goes, I'm a big clenbuterol fan. I really think it works really, really well. And I'll start off at 20 micrograms twice a day, and I'll work up to as high as 20 micrograms 6 times a day if necessary. Obviously, if it's not necessary, you won't do that. And I feel that people get really good fat burning results. I run it every single day. The only time I cut it back is the last 2 days. Like if there's a Saturday show, on Friday and Saturday, I cut it back to 20 twice a day so the person can carb up a little bit better. For some reason, when you're having too much clenbuterol in the system, it can make it hard to carb.
Little testimonial here from Megatrend. Dave, love the show. I've lost 41 pounds since January 25th following your high-protein keto diet. I still have 60 more pounds to lose, and I just have to say I'm making absolute awesome gains, and the weight loss is falling off. Thank you so much for your advice. Let's go to Paulie S. Jody's. I watched the Jason Ha interview. He had mercury poisoning. I used to eat 11 to 12 ounces of cooked wild-caught swordfish a day, also 1 or 2 tuna steaks in the same day, and 9 ounces of cooked Atlantic Farm salmon. Lots of seafood, basically. Last week, tested my blood mercury level, results 79, OR equals 10 MCTL, so I'm guessing it's high. What do you suggest?
I don't think I've ever heard of anyone eating that much fish. I didn't even know it was possible. I mean, I don't know. I almost don't believe it. I'd like to see a video of him doing it because 12 pounds, that's like a ridiculous amount. I mean, a pound of fish probably has 60 grams of protein. Do the math. So it's like 1,000 grams of protein a day. I know Kai used to eat a lot of fish, but he was enormous. So as far as, I would get your mercury levels checked. If they're not high, don't worry about it. If they're high, then you might need to do some chelation therapy to get that heavy metals out of your body. That's a lot of fish. I've never heard of, it's like I said, that's gonna be a world record,
Gardno, is Masteron sufficient to compensate for testosterone aromatization when cycling, and if how high should it be dosed in order to get that effect?
Say that again, what was the?
Is Masteron sufficient to compensate for testosterone aromatization when cycling? And if so, how high should it be dosed in order to get that effect?
I never really used Masteron as a anti-aromatase or anti-estrogen in my body. I know I did the video on it that it acts like one and it blocks estrogen receptors, and that's great. But I wouldn't use that as my aromatase inhibitor because it's really not an aromatase inhibitor. So I would still take like an Arimidex or a Femara and mix it in there to make sure that I'm not producing estrogen from testosterone. Because at night, especially, your body will pulse that stuff. And if you're taking testosterone, you don't want it aromatizing. So I wouldn't depend on Masteron. It's cool to have Masteron there, so if any does escape or get by, the Masteron can kind of block that from working. But I would definitely take in, some sort of an aromatase inhibitor.
Dougie or Doogie Hunter hate to show more than Divine Wilson hates to lose. Is there any way to break down fibrosis tissue in the deltoids?
Unfortunately, a lot of fibrotic tissue that's in there is in there forever unless you get it surgically removed. If it just happened and you're just forming, scar tissue, you might be able to massage it out, deep tissue it out. But if it's been there for years already and you just can't get rid of it, I think you guys are stuck with it, and I know it sucks, that's not the answer you want to hear. You could try some of these new sound wave therapies where they kind of send these crazy pulses of high potency sound waves to break stuff up. That might work, but it might not. So it's hard for me to give advice on this. The best thing is find a good plastic surgeon and have them remove it.
Action figure 86 hours after training hamstrings. My hammies always cramp up when I activate them, even just from sitting down. It goes away the next day. I drink 2 gallons of water and sodium is not low. What could be causing this?
Cramping? Is that what he was saying?
Yeah.
Usually people who cramp, usually it's due to too little sodium in the diet. And that's just the way it is. Now, I've seen guys go for blood work and their sodium was normal, and then I gave them tons of sodium to eat and it solved their problem. So first thing I would do is add salt to your meals for a couple days, see if that solves the problem. If not, then you might want to go to the doctor and get some tests done.
Rich Years, I hate this show. Are there any benefits to injecting tests subcutaneously? Any downsides? Awaiting your response.
I don't like doing steroids subcutaneously. I think it's a imperfect method of absorption. I think what happens invariably is a lot of the oil gets trapped under the skin, it gets irritated, it gets red, it gets inflamed. The stuff was designed to be injected intramuscularly. Don't try to recreate the wheel. It's not adding any benefit to the equation. It's the same drug. I mean, it's the same stuff you're putting into your body, okay? It's not altering anything, the absorption route. It's like, should you take GH intramuscularly or should you take it subcutaneously? It says in the package sub-Q, but we know that you can do it IM. IM is always better. It gets absorbed faster and you don't get a welt where you injected it. So that's why I prefer the IM route.
ELO 1128 got labs done on a low TRT dose while taking an AI to prevent pubescent gyno from flaring up. Anyway, it's been flaring up behind the nipples and is quite sore with puffiness. Why is this happening when my labs show my estrogen and prolactin are pretty low? Test level was over 1,000.
What he said, prolactin was low. Was estrogen low too?
Yes.
I don't know. That's a good question.
And prolactin were both low.
Usually, if you have low estrogen and low prolactin, then your nipples should be fine. The estrogen receptors on there shouldn't be being affected. Unless you have just, I don't know. That's weird. You really shouldn't. But you know what? Some people are so sensitive to estrogen that even a small amount in your body, because remember, you're getting probably 90% or 95%, you're knocking out the estrogen. The rest still gets through. So if you have 5% and it can get through, then you're having problems with estrogen. It's unlikely that would happen, but it is possible, obviously.
Rob MT Dave, in 1965, Larry Scott took home $1,000 at the first Mr. Olympia. Now, decades later, Phil Heath takes home over $400,000 and Flex Lewis over $40,000. Do you feel the huge difference in prize money between the two classes is justified, given they both essentially take the same risks?
Well, the Open Mr. Olympia is the Mr. Olympia. The 212 is not the Mr. Olympia, it's the 212 Olympia title. So, the greatest title, Joe Weider created the Mr. Olympia for all the champions out there to be able to compete in one place to be named the best bodybuilder in the world. And so I think the best bodybuilder in the world should get the most compensation, bar none. There would be no Olympia if it wasn't for the men's bodybuilding. Classic is not carrying the men's Olympia. Even 212 is not carrying the men's Olympia. And certainly figure or women's physique or bikini are not carrying the Mr. Olympia competition. So those guys deserve the most money. If you want to be the best in the world, no asterisks next to your name whatsoever, you got to beat the best on that Olympia stage.
Fitnessman 81, Dave, please talk about creatinine levels and high protein intake. Do bodybuilders always have high creatinine levels? Any tips to decrease?
High creatinine is not inherent in bodybuilding. So if you have high creatinine, it means your kidneys are being taxed in some way, and they're not effectively filtering the blood properly. And that could be from fibrosis building up there. It could be from scar tissue. It could be from just the kidney tubules being damaged from high blood pressure. And that's unfortunately, something that happens. How do you keep creatinine low? You keep your kidneys filtering better. I sell a product on DavePalumbo.com called Kidney Stuff. It reduces inflammation around the kidney tubules. It keeps them open bigger, and it allows blood flow to increase through there. Thus, you get better filtration. You get lower levels of these metabolites that shouldn't be there because they're being, released from the body. And that, to me, is probably the best thing you can do for kidneys. That and keeping your blood pressure under control. Don't be afraid if you have to take a blood pressure medication to take it, because keeping blood pressure low is also the number one or number two risk factor for having high blood pressure and for causing later disease later in life. So you want that blood pressure lower. So follow whatever you got to do, whether it be blood pressure meds from the doctor. ACE inhibitors are great. If your creatinine is already high, try the Kidney Stuff.
Good one here from Greg C25, and I'm sure it's a question that many bodybuilders would have. How would you find a, quote, good doctor that understands the bodybuilding lifestyle? Struggling to find one. So I guess in general, what are some of the things that you should be looking for in a doctor to understand the bodybuilder lifestyle?
I've been very lucky. There's always been guys that were doctors that I knew that were bodybuilders, or guys who worked out at least and understood the lifestyle. One of my doctors, Dr. Barrett, who's no longer with us, he was great with that back in New York. There's another guy, John Baccio there, who I knew growing up. He was a bodybuilder growing up. He's a general practitioner. I send a lot of guys to him now also. He looks at work. I send a lot of people to TitanMedicalCenter.com. They know the bodybuilder lifestyle as well, and they're good at monitoring blood work and making sure that you're staying healthy. You can also get hormone replacement from them. And so these are all, vehicles, to utilize. I have a cardiologist, Dr. Trezera in New York, who is also a bodybuilder. So luckily I got one in New York and I got one out here in Florida, down here in Florida. It's not luck, because if you put it out to the universe will come back to you and bring you what you need. And I truly believe that. So search for your doctor, Google, ask people in the gym, and you'll find someone that you're comfortable using, guaranteed.
That's going to do it for this episode of Ask Dave, brought to you by Species Nutrition. Again, reminder, Regan Grimes' interview live right now on RxMuscle.com and the YouTube channel. Akeem Williams going live tonight. Nick Trigili live as well. We're going to have full coverage of the 2018 New York Pro this upcoming weekend. Keep it locked to RxMuscle.com. For Tyler Shore and Dave Palumbo, I'm Sadiq Faruqi. We'll see you next time.